And welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Sports Daily. And we are live with you. Jake Albracht, Paul Savage in for us today. Tommy will join us in just a little bit. Glad to have Paul in. Glad to be here with you on this, what day is it, Paul?
Well, this would be Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Wednesday edition, the day after a Sunflower Showdown game that we saw the best of one team in that little rivalry matchup. We got all kinds of stuff coming for you. The KFH hotline will be open today, 869-1240. We're going to have a contest to tell you about. We'll have some giveaways to tell you about. We are rocked and loaded here, locked and loaded, I should say, and ready to rock and roll because we're fueled up by some Prairie Fire Coffee. Mornings at KFH. The staff all enjoy some Prairie Fire Coffee. We appreciate that from our friends there. Paul, good morning. How are you?
I am fine, thank you, sir. It's good to be in. By the way, I got to give you my update. Rocco and I were out earlier this week. Went up to some businesses up around the East Store for H2O. And let me tell you, I got the coffee. I got it black. I knew you'd be proud of it. I probably I would have gotten something special in it. I knew I was going to be on the radio with a little. Just wanted to let you know how much Rocco and I enjoyed our visit up there. And can I just tell you this? You can have some great people there. I'm not kidding. No, I'm not kidding.
Good
and
kids.
I'm not trying to, smoke them for a free cup of coffee. I'm just telling you, they are nice kids. They make you feel wanted. They make you feel appreciated. And you got some good people up there. But anyway, that being said, that's my weekly update for H2O.
HTO out east had coffee, do coffee actually free range. So Paul got a chance to try to do stuff you can too. We'll have a giveaway.
Yeah.
Gives you that opportunity
Thank
in
you.
just a little bit. Sunflower Showdown
Right.
here, Paul, last night. It was, we saw a 12-point line, and we were like, that seems a little tight, and it was never really in question at all, quite frankly. And KU rolls 90-68. The seniors, Kevin McCullough, Hunter Dickinson, each with big games. Nick Timberlake with his best game as a Jayhawk, interestingly enough. What's kind of funny about that is look at what this team is when Timberlake does that. And that's what they sort of expected from him this year, right? Was somebody to come in and hit a bunch of threes and, do his thing. And he was exactly what they'd hoped he would be, except he didn't hit any threes, Paul.
Right.
It was all it was creating offense. He hit 4 threes, 4 of them, but he hit 2 other shots. He was creative offensively. And so he has his 12 points from the 3-point line. Now, look, they don't expect him to come in and shoot 4 or 5 every time, right? But they expect him to come in and hit open threes. And that's what he did last night on his way to 18 points. He missed 1 shot the entire game. He didn't turn the ball over at all. And all of a sudden, you see how good KU can be. So I thought of everything, and we'll get into all of this, but I thought of everything for KU as, McCullough continues to look relatively healthy. Hunter Dickinson flexes with 20 rebounds, which is just great to see. DeJuan Harris had 7 assists, not a ton of turnovers overall for KU. Really, oddly, not a ton of turnovers for K-State either, which you would expect to see when they get beat like that. But KU plays a good game defensively. They play a great game offensively. But it was Nick Timberlake finally giving them what they'd hoped he could give them on their way to a big win like that. I don't know how much he can carry that over, but 4 or 5 from 3 from that guy ain't too bad, and it's exactly what this team needs.
Well, we've talked about Nick Timberlake, and just in the last, month or so, we had a long conversation about him. And, he was one of those guys when things were looking bleak, where they were much bleaker. I don't know that physically they've improved that much, but they've getting some kids back from injury. And I guess they're getting better. I guess they're getting stronger. They're healing up on some certain things. But with that being said, we had the conversation that he had to get better. And I remember that conversation. And while neither one of us were very hopeful that he would be that one ingredient, last night he looked good. He was that spark plug. He was that guy that kind of, got that team rocking, got that team rolling a little bit. And so, you just know to yourself that, you get Nick Timberlake and you got him rocking and rolling. KU can be can be that team. I mean, all of a sudden there's another weapon that you've got to account for, that you just can't say, we'll slap a guy on him or we'll work him with some zone. But I'll tell you what, it was an impressive win. It was impressive enough. I had a hard time staying with it. I mean, I wanted to get away from it. I mean, here, you get to around the 20-point mark and you can't do anything if you're K-State. And by the way, Coach Tang, I've seen him look frustrated before, but boy, he was frustrated last night. You could see it. Now, he didn't boil over. He's not that kind of coach. I mean, he's not that.
Missed the handshake line, Paul.
Well,
missed the handshake line.
Those things happen. I'm giving him. I'm giving him a lot of.
We'll get Tommy's thoughts on that in a little bit. I had fun with that. He sent me that. I was like, well, maybe they thought they were just getting out of the way of potential court storming. Maybe maybe they were ducking out of there.
But it's hard to storm a court when you win by 20-some points. Come on now, it's just
and KU's not storming a court. I'm just kidding there. Yeah. That was in a. We'll let Tommy chime in on the drama of things afterward. I know he'll have some thoughts there. Yeah. Timberlake, Paul. For him, I don't think we expected it just because we've been waiting all year and we hadn't seen it. And at times it had gone so poorly that you just had written it off. I don't know if it's repeatable. That's a big emotional moment that they won't have again at home in that environment. But if it is. And we talked about this yesterday. KU profiles in a lot of ways to a team that can make a tournament run because they're good enough defensively to do that. Now, offensively, they look different than other teams that have made it. Except last year, they kind of remind me, and just like San Diego State last year was not a great shooting team, but boy, they were tough. They were incredible rebounders, and they played great defense. KU can be all of that, right? They with Timberlake and Adams down there, they should never lose rebounding battles, and McCullough for that matter, if he's healthy. They have the experienced point guard. They do all the things that you like to see out of a tournament team. They just don't shoot the three at all. Well, that's where Timberlake can step in. Paul, outside of Timberlake, McCullough shot a couple, and McCullough's going to take threes, right? He doesn't always hit it, but he's going to take them. That's it. The only other player on the team besides Timberlake to hit a three last night, Paul, was Kevin McCullough.
That's exactly right. That's right.
And so it was like you got everything you normally get from KU, but Nick Timberlake hit some shots. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden it's a team that wins a game by 22 points. Is his impact potentially that massive? Remy Martins was on the national championship team. So maybe. But we just haven't seen it.
Right.
And it's not too late. They get one more opportunity for this. If he can replicate anything close to what he did last night on the road at Houston, I mean, you can do that anywhere at that point.
Right.
So, I mean, clearly I think the spotlight moves to him in this regular season finale and whatever they do in the tournament. If he heats up, Paul, now all of a sudden I think you're talking about a team everybody feels like is ripe to get knocked out early to a team that could legitimately make a run here, because now you do have, Furphy is a highly qualified, player that has started most of the year, but you have basically a 6-man rotation with, the other freshmen maybe giving you a few minutes, but that makes this team look totally different. And it's what we've been waiting for all year long. Mm-hmm. It just hadn't been there. So it was bleak. Now, you see it, and it tantalizes a little bit.
Well, you kind of phrased it the way I hadn't really thought of it that way, but you have phrased it. This is the team that we were kind of looking for, but we haven't seen it. And I'll be real truthful. You're exactly right. What we watched last night was a team that I think to myself, how in the heck do you have seven conference losses? You play like that, and you have 7 conference losses. And I thought to myself, well,
right.
This is a different team. But Nick Timberlake, you get him rolling, and now you've got Furphy coming off the bench. He scores 8 points, gives you 30 basically quality minutes, defended pretty well. Was able to drive the paint. I mean, did a great job. I mean, when you start having those kind of things together, and you've got basically, you've got 8 guys that you could start to count on a little bit because before it was like 6. I mean, there was a point, what, a month ago, we were talking about how did KU have 6 guys that could be on the court at any one time. And so this is really a good development. Nick Timberlake, boy, oh boy, he looked really good last night. And it looked like a star, looked like what I thought he could be. Now, you've kind of hammered me a little bit on that about a month ago. My infatuation with Nick Timberlake, you kind of hammered me, and I think rightfully so, Jacob. I think you were probably right on that. You hammered me on it, but because he hasn't shown what we thought he had. And I mean, granted, it's late in the season. It's kind of late in the season, but you got a tournament coming up for the Big 12. You got an NCAA tournament coming up. If ever you're going to start taking off and you're going to start showing that you can play, now's a good time to do it. And Nick Timberlake showed us that. That's a difference. That was the difference of a route versus an 8-point win, a 6-point win, that kind of thing. Nick Timberlake was that difference last night for that kind of win for the University of Kansas. Where have you been, the rest or, most of the season? And that's a good question, but you showed up better late to the party than never.
It's just so interesting, right? We've all thought, and look, McCullough is incredible.
No, that's true.
We've all looked at this and been concerned, like, oh, they've got to have McCullough. They've had McCullough at times this year and still struggled. Now, I still think they have to have McCullough because they have to be at their absolute best defensively to make a run. But it's really Timberlake that can transform this team. And it's him because it's anybody that can hit threes, right? It's not just like the three-pointer has been this fascinating thing for KU, both offensively and defensively this year. They have to defend it better than they have at times, but they just have not been a team that even messes around with it, right? They learned early on this year that they're not a great shooting team, and so they haven't really messed with it, and they just kind of don't do it, which is, probably okay. I'll trust Bill Self to some degree on that. They're not going to get DeJuan Harris to do it. We know that by now, and really, outside of McCullough and Furphy, you really don't want anybody else shooting threes except Nick Timberlake if he's hitting them. And if they can get him to come in and hit shots and, just not make mistakes and turn the ball over like we've seen him do at times this year, it does totally transform this team and its prospects. Remember, Paul, if you go back and look at Kansas this year and who they've beaten, and you go back and you let's just look at the Ken Palm here. Okay. So let's look at the Ken Palm and let's remember that Kansas has a win over Ken Palm's top-ranked team, Houston. Kansas has a win over Ken Palm's second-ranked team, UConn. Kansas has a win over Tennessee, who right now is number 6 in the Ken Palm. So you go back and you look at those teams that people are going to love to take on tournament runs. And remember that Kansas has beaten all those teams. They beat UConn back in early December. They beat Tennessee back in November. Oh, yeah, by the way, they have a win over Kentucky, who's Ken Palm's 18. They have all these wins over teams that we think may have a chance in the tournament. It has just gotten so sideways on them that we forget how good they have been at points this year because they've gone through this rough stretch, a rough stretch like we almost never see them go through, a rough stretch where they lose 3 out of 5 games, right? One of those coming at home. And you forget about all that stuff. But if they can get it going, and we'll see. I don't know if I'm not saying I think they're going to go down to Houston and win. I'm not saying that at all. But if they can go down there and we can see Timberlake put together another good game, they're going to be a really interesting pick in the tournament, Paul. People will forget about them. They're going to be a 2 or 3 seed probably. And they'll sort of be forgotten about this year. Right. But just file that away as you're filling out your brackets that this team beat UConn. This team beat Houston already this season, beat Tennessee. That's 3 top 6 teams right now that the metrics love. Keep that in mind and file that away.
Well, and let's not forget, Joe Lunardi has KU at a 3 seed right now as we speak, as of the last day or two. I don't know if you can take anything by that. There's still a lot of basketball to be played. And, this game was interesting. Can I throw you out one little tidbit? I want your opinion on Hunter Dickinson in the game he had last night. he was kind of one of those lost guys. I mean, as I watched this game, I was wondering, when is Hunter Dickinson going to step up and dominate this game? And while
He's
he
been
had,
so good all
but
year.
I mean, once you have Nick Timberlake and he was shining like he was, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, Hunter Dickinson really didn't have all that great a game. But then I turn around and I look at
Last
the line.
night?
Yeah, well, I mean, a typical game for him would be 20 some points, that kind of thing, and he had 15 points, but he had 20 rebounds, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, something,
he was incredible last night. He had
five
blocks,
but 5 for 16, did not shoot the ball as well.
Yeah, he's had better offensive games. That's fair.
That's what I'm talking about, is because we've come to expect offensively Hunter Dickinson to be that guy that, well, let's face it, he has carried this team on his backs at certain points in this season. And we expect him to do that. But boy, oh boy, when somebody lifts the weights off of his shoulder like a Nick Timberlake did last night, I'll tell you what, the future is going to be great. Because I sit there, I don't notice him through the game. You notice him. I mean, I know he's there. And
I know he's got a Tim Duncan quality. No, I get it. I get what you're saying. It's like Tim Duncan, right? All of a sudden you look up and he's got 20 rebounds and he's got a bunch of blocks.
That's exactly right.
You know what he did do though last night offensively that will also be pretty important to use? He hit his free throws. And he struggled with that a couple of times in recent games. They collectively as a team hit 28 of 31. That's how they got to 90, right? Like when you look at it and you're like, man, 90 points. They got to 90 because they took a ton of free throws and they hit almost all of them. They had 28 points from the free throw line. That's not sustainable. Okay, it's not sustainable to shoot that percentage. It's not sustainable to take that many free throws in a game. So, I look less at that margin in that way and more at that was the best version of them when they have somebody to threaten from the outside. But I wouldn't count on 90 points because you're not going to take 31 free throws and hit 28 of them probably ever again this season. But even if you bring that down more to an average, you're still looking at, a 12, 14-point win. And remember, they pulled everybody off at the end of the game. So some of that is not sustainable, right? Some of it is, though. The defense is. So they hold K-State in a wild game where they have subs coming in and players playing to 68. Remember those wins I told you about earlier in the year? When they played Tennessee and beat them, held them to 60 points. When they played UConn and beat them, held them to 65 points. When they played Houston and beat them, held them to 65 points. KU will win games in the tournament and do what it does if it plays the best defense it can play, which can be as good as any defense in the country. So all of this we're talking about has been great to see offensively just because we've been missing some of it, but it's the defense that's the X factor still for this team.
Real quick, over-under against Houston, which, boy, could you ask for a better closeout game in the Big 12 regular season than Houston? But over-under, Houston KU, over-under for Houston, 75 points.
Oh, under. I mean, they went to 65 last time. Defense travels. I would say under. Now, it's Houston's senior night. It's going to be an emotional environment. I don't know what to expect out of that game, quite frankly.
Really?
I know. Senior nights like that and in that environment and some of those players that have been there, that will be a tough spot for KU. I don't look so much as can KU go win that game as can KU just play the style or close to it that we saw last night in their highly emotional game. But it should be fun. When we come back, let's hit on the K-State side of this, Paul.
All right.
We'll talk about the Cats a little bit. Very obviously disappointing outcome for them. We'll hit it next. Your thoughts at 869-1240 on that KFH hotline. We'll have more for you coming on Sports Daily.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
KFH and Taco Bell have your chance to win a trip for two to the College Hoops Championship Tournament in Kansas City, March 13th through the 16th, to cheer on your favorite teams. The trip includes 2 all-session tournament passes and 3-night hotel accommodations. To enter, simply text TBBIG to the number 20357. Want a complimentary breakfast burrito? Go to KFHradio.com. Click on the events page, download the voucher, and then head to any Wichita and surrounding Taco Bell locations, including Hutchinson. Your chance to see the College Hoops Championship Tournament and snag a complimentary breakfast burrito from Taco Bell happens here on KFH. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Paul Savage here. Tommy Castor will be on with us shortly. Paul, we talked about the good of last night as it pertains to KU, not good for K-State. They lose another. They're probably now looking at a must win the Big 12 tournament scenario to get into the NCAA tournament. They'll be disappointed last night, and you've got the drama that we'll get to of the handshake lines and all that stuff. And I just imagine being Jerome Tang now with the second team facing the challenge of going into Allen Fieldhouse, but you got nothing out of Tyler Perry. He was 0 for 6 from the field, just 2 points. He'd been sort of the catalyst offensively for them. But when you have a combined 15 points between Kaluma, Carter, and Perry, I mean, you don't stand a chance with a combined 3 of 14 from 3, or 3 of 13. I'm sorry, you're not going to
Well,
just not.
yeah.
And so, I think probably it's a credit to KU for defending them the way that they did, but that was about as bad as it could have gone for K-State when you look at what you knew they would have to have, right, to be able to try to win that game.
Well, you look at the box score. I mean, there's hardly a category that K-State played better than the University of Kansas, and it's obvious. I mean, you don't even have to watch the game. You can just look at the box score and go, "Oh, well." I mean, it's obvious K-State would lose that game, and they lost it in dramatic fashion. But the thing that's more distressing than anything else is how it happened. It happened with a lifeless team. It seems to me
Yeah.
it's like they found out that they're not going to the big dance, and right now that's where Joe Lenardi has K-State. They're probably out. In fact, I don't even know that a win against Iowa State would put them in. They finish up the season with Iowa State. Boy, that's a tough go get. And even if you needed that win to get into the tournament, which I don't think would benefit them, I don't think they're going to get in. What are you going to play for? Because let's face it, last night was as uninspired a basketball team that I have seen play under Coach Tang. I did not see inspiration. I did not see effort. You see those things, but I mean, not to the point where you go, wow, that is a team that's just got it together. They're wanting it. It was a team of going through the motions. I don't know how much it had to do with them figuring out Joe Lenardi has them out of the tournament. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it had to have something to do with it because they were uninspired. Or am I just seeing something, Jacob? Am I not looking at that?
I think you're probably overlooking it. I don't think there was any chance K-State was not going to be inspired in that game. I think it got away from them.
They played that way.
Yeah, they got their butts kicked, but
Well,
that
that's
doesn't
it.
mean you
Okay.
didn't
All
come
right.
in with the right
All right.
attitude.
Okay, I got
there's it would stun me to imagine a scenario where they weren't motivated or anything like that. I think they just got their butts kicked. And that happens when you go into Allen Fieldhouse on a senior night. That's not anything unusual, but unfortunately for them, it's the way the schedule falls. And after they couldn't get it done against Cincinnati, right, you had to have that one. And so you almost, and maybe there's some hangover from that. I don't know, but if you get the game against Cincinnati last night, matters far less in your tournament chances because you could still come back home and beat Iowa State and probably be in pretty good shape. That didn't happen. They didn't get it done against Cincinnati, and maybe there was a little bit of a hangover there. I doubt it in a rivalry game. So, I mean, for K-State, look, they'll still play that Iowa State game, but then it's all about the tournament. Can they make a special tournament run and do something crazy? I would say the chances of that are low because you will likely have to win a combination of games, right, against Iowa State, Kansas, or Houston. You'll have to probably beat 2 of them in some capacity if you're going to do it, and that makes it daunting. I think other than that, you look at those 3 teams, Baylor's going to be in that mix too, the way they're playing, so now maybe it's 2 of those 4. I do think with the Big 12 tournament, it's going to be fun and wacky and crazy, but I think it's hard to imagine anyone outside of those 4 winning that tournament because it probably means somebody's going to have to beat a couple of them. Like if K-State's going to win the Big 12 tournament, they need absolute madness and chaos.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
And but because I don't think they're going to run, I don't know that this team is capable on a neutral floor of beating 2 of those teams in basically back-to-back nights. Or days. That's what's going to make it daunting. Whereas if they win that game against Cincinnati, let's say you still get your butts kicked in Lawrence, but you can find a way to beat Iowa State. Now you're not looking at a situation where you got to win the whole tournament. Now you just got to get like one more big signature win. It's almost I don't think it's going to happen for K-State. So how they finish, we'll see. It's been an interesting year for them. I don't count this year as unsuccessful for them because they didn't have who we thought would be their best player in Naquan Tomlin at any point. You put Naquan Tomlin on this team, Paul, and I got to believe they're in just fine shape, ready to roll for the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And that's what's so unfortunate about it. But you know what? They can still get out there and they can still play games. They have shown at times this year that they can beat really, really good teams. They beat Kansas, but they beat them at home. Can they beat two of them, and not stumble at all in a Big 12 tournament? That seems pretty unlikely. But they get one more at home. They get their senior night against Iowa State, hopefully a chance to be inspired and try to do something special there. But yeah, I mean, look, K-State fans don't feel good today at all. That team doesn't feel good today at all. That's a tough way to, sort of have the door slammed on your at-large hopefuls to get beat like that at Allen Fieldhouse.
Well, can I let me get straight what I think you're saying. And right now, the Wildcats' overall season is 17-13. I think what you're saying is that for any hope for the Kansas State Wildcats to make the tournament, other than winning the Big 12 championship for the automatic bid, what you're saying is that they've got to get 20, maybe 21 losses, which will include Iowa State at home. That's doable. That's
20 or 21 wins, right?
21 wins. I mean, that's what this team is looking at. 20 to 21 wins, which means a win against Iowa State at home, and that means winning 2 games in the tournament at minimum.
I don't think that's going to be enough. I think they've got to win the tournament now.
So 21 wins. If they got to the point,
no, I think the only path in is a tournament win. Well, I don't think they're going to have enough to get in without winning the Big 12 tournament. I mean, right now, no matter how you slice it, when you look at the Big 12, they're going to need better net, but they're down there right now at 10. So I mean, you're at 10. Cincinnati just beat you. Cincinnati's better in the net. Even if they're at 10 and Cincinnati remains a game behind them, right now they have identical season-long records. Cincinnati has a head-to-head win over them. I mean, maybe if they can climb up another rung and they beat Iowa State, and let me look at the net rankings and see just where they sit, because how many quad 1 wins do they have? So give me just a second and we'll look at this. So when we're looking at quad 1 wins, if you go down to K-State, and you got to go way down because they're way below Cincinnati right now in the net. They're all the way down at 78. They're still now behind UCF in the net, by the way. So quad 1 wins, they have 4. UCF has 2. So you can put them over UCF even though they're worse in the net. Cincinnati only has 3 quad 1 wins. So there is a slight ticket, but I mean, you're talking about a 35 spot difference in the net right now over a team that just beat you head to head. Maybe if you can beat Iowa State, right? But I don't think they're making up the net gap. So then it's that in combination. And again, this is all if they take 10 teams from the Big 12. If they take 9, now you're really in trouble if you're K-State, because you're not going to jump over Texas or TCU. Probably not Oklahoma, definitely not Texas Tech. So like that's where their only chances if they take 10 and if they can finish with a better resume, basically, than Cincinnati, who's 30 spots ahead of them in the net rankings.
Right.
That is why I'm not sure it's possible.
Yeah.
Now, if they took 10, Cincinnati loses another game and then gets bounced early in the tournament, and K-State beats Iowa State and gets 2 tournament wins. I mean, maybe, but it's going to be, I don't know. I think you just have to approach it like win the Big 12 tournament and see, and let it fall where it may, because if 9-9, remember, Jerome Tang's been saying 9-9, 9-9. They can't finish 9-9 now, right? The best they can finish is 8-10. So then there's so many things you're hoping for at that point.
Right. Well,
I don't know. I just don't know if it's going to be possible.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking in the back of my mind, and I'm probably out on a limb on this, is that you beat Iowa State. Well, first of all, let's just say that you got to win against Iowa State, or it is over. But you win against Iowa State at home. That's doable. I think we both agree. You play well, you can win that game. So you go into the tournament. Let's say you get to the finals.
Iowa State.
You don't. Oh, Iowa State's good. I get it. You don't think they're going to beat Iowa State at home? I think with as much at
no. Do I think Kansas State is going to beat Iowa State at home? I do not think
well, then
that.
our conversation is basically over, because if that does, I mean, we know what that outcome is. But let's say here's where I think they've got to be, and I don't know if I'm off or I'm not, and I don't have the rankings in front of me. All I'm doing is going off the top of my head. You get to the finals of the Big 12 tournament. You beat Iowa State at home first. You get to the finals. You don't win the finals. I think you're still in. Because that would put you having run the gauntlet of the Big 12 tournament into the finals. I think that would be enough for the committee to take a look and say, this is a team that deserves to be in. And at that point, that means probably the Big 12 will have 10 teams in.
It has to mean that they're not getting in if they're only 9 Big 12 teams.
That's right. But how about you get to the finals? Do you think they're in if they just could get to the finals? And then they lose the finals, they're not Big 12
champions. If there are 9 teams in, no. If there are 10 teams, I suppose it's possible. It depends on what Cincinnati does. But if if you're telling me they're going to be 10 teams in, I would tell you it's basically them versus Cincinnati and UCF. But I don't think that there's going to be 10 teams. I wish there were, but I think it's going to be 9. And so if it's 9, no, I don't think they're going to jump any of those other teams in resume. They're too far behind them in the net. So you can either hope that 10 teams make it in, which I suppose is possible. It would be unprecedented, or you go win the Big 12 tournament.
I'm with you.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Look, here's the reality. If they beat Iowa State, we're all then going to start wondering again what could be possible.
Right. That is
right. If they lose to Iowa State, then it's very obvious.
Yeah.
You got to win the Big 12 tournament.
But
the chances of that, they're going to be 6 to 10 point dogs at home against Iowa State. Iowa State's really, 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 really good. 869-1240. What do you think? Let us know on the KFH hotline. On the way out, let's give away some HTO. A free iced tea for you. More than 25 flavors to choose from. Those are available, of course, at either Wichita location or in Derby. And then we'll also give you a free coffee drink, now featuring Free Reign coffee. All new, just started this week. And you can get that at the Derby location or in East Wichita. We'll get one of each of those to you. First caller to that KFH hotline, 869-1240. Good luck, everybody. Paul and I will be back with more Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Paul Savage. Paul, an interesting story as we make our way to the end of hour number one. I saw that a lot of the Chiefs fans who got frostbite at the Dolphins game, that really, really cold game, are now looking at, I think that the story out of Kansas City was about 70% of them are likely to need amputations now because of the frostbite suffered at that game.
Well,
that's dedication to your team.
Well,
there.
This is distressing to me. I mean, this is very, very distressing, and I guess it just goes to show you that you don't screw around with Mother Nature. Let's just put it that way. And I am just shocked at this story. When you sent this story to me this morning, I was stunned. I was shocked. I had no idea, and I am very, very, very sad for these people. To have something so glorious as the caliber of NFL that the Chiefs are playing, and you have this situation, and what would be appear to be some fun and that kind of thing happens like that. Oh my goodness, it's just distressing to me. But I'm thinking, well, obviously the first thing you got to do is you've got to set some sort of rules with regards to how cold can it be, what's got to be done. And I think to myself, well, you can't be telling people what to do like that.
Make a choice. You make a choice to go to the game.
But if you're going to go, I guess this is as good a lesson as any. If you're going to go to a game,
I saw
this cold,
and this was out of
out.
Fox in Kansas City had the story, and there was a story of one guy who had frostbite because he took his gloves off for 5 minutes to put a tent up.
5 minutes?
Party.
Oh my God.
I just like the cold we knew is dangerous, but people make the choices that they make to go or not go. It's fine. Everybody, has the ability to do that if they want to. I do wonder though, if you had to, let's say you had to lose a finger because you went to that game. You lose your finger. When you have to tell the story to people when they ask about what happened to your finger, is it like a fandom badge of honor almost to say, I lost that finger because I went to that Chiefs Dolphins game and got frostbite? Like, is that like, well, now that's a fan. I think it probably is. At least at minimum, you get a good story out of it, right? There are worse ways to lose a finger. Like a lawnmower accident. That's not that exciting of a story. But to be able to say that, that's the reason, at least it's a decent story. Now, I'm not trying to downplay the situation because I don't know the severity of any of this. I'm just like, in general terms, if it is like the tip of a finger or something like that, hopefully these people are all okay and this doesn't affect their lives too much.
What do you mean okay? They're getting parts of their body cut off.
I know. I understand.
This is a stunning development. No. You lose a finger, you lose a toe. No, this is serious, Jacob. I mean, come on.
Like, I'll give you an example. Okay. So I had my sister-in-law's brother, one of my sister-in-law's brothers, is missing his thumb. Now, his reason for it, nobody wants to be missing a thumb, right?
Correct.
But it was a rodeo accident, right? His thumb got caught in the saddle horn, and the rope got dangled around it, and it just like popped it off. He gets to tell that story. It's not a bad story if you got to deal with it, and he has fun with it, and so it's like, okay, that's a pretty good story.
Well,
I'm just trying to wonder, like, if you have to go through that, which is terrible and awful and everything, can you at least get a good story out of it? I think you probably can.
Well, what kind of story is I had to put up a tent? I mean, I took my glove
off.
No,
I don't mean that specifically. I'm just saying in general, like, I went to this football game, right? Geez. I was there to support the Chiefs.
I'm not doing
because
it.
I'm
not going there.
Look, I knew people were like thinking about going up there and going to the game and doing all that. And I'm like, guys, I got to tell you, like, no part of that sounds fun to me. Like, I can't imagine any part of the scenario of, what was it? We were almost 30 below in wind chills.
That's right. It was
that would make me spend the money to go. Now, I know those tickets got real cheap to acquire, but it's
under $50 in certain cases.
It's like a early round playoff game for a team that goes to at least 3 of those playoff games a year. I'm like, I don't think that's, I think, that's what, now again, Paul, I don't think they needed to not play the game or anything. That's not what I'm saying either. Like, just play the game because, you've got to you've got ways to keep players warm and put heaters on the sideline and do all that stuff. But that is a jarring number when I sent you that story of that many people potentially. And I don't know what 70% of the total number. I don't know what the total number was. And I think there's a lot of it where, doctors are trying to let people know how dangerous frostbite is. We do that every year. We downplay the dangers of just cold air outside and what it can do to you. But that's going to be a tough realization for a lot of people that they'll have to face amputation because they went to a football game.
Did you think about the people in the upper? I mean, I actually thought about the situation for those in the upper deck. I mean, the wind.
Yeah, there's no heaters up there.
I've been to a game. In fact, I've been to a couple games in my life. One time it was in the upper deck. The wind just kind of scurries over it. I mean, it just kind of, I'm sure it's much windier. In fact, I know it's windier in the upper deck. And I was thinking to myself, that's almost cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, I just thought to myself, that's a health hazard. That many people in that upper deck was worrisome to me. And now it comes to show that I'll bet it was. I know this is an interesting story. It's a hard story for me to do, though, to be real truthful. Something we love like NFL football to this level, and you lose an appendage. That just blows my mind.
Well, I don't even know that it's a finger. I don't know what the amputation. I don't know any of it. I'm sure it will be a terrible situation for some people.
Right.
And thank goodness everybody is alive and okay. It just the reality of some of these situations comes in after the fact. I saw that and my jaw hit the floor. I was like, my God, 70% of the people that got frostbite, which I know it was a large number of people that got frostbite, are potentially facing amputation now.
You stunned me as well, my friend. You stunned me too.
It is just
wow.
That is that's a tough one. That's a tough one. All right. That's hour number 1. We'll come back. Congratulations to Jim, by the way, for winning some HTO iced tea and coffee. We'll come back. Hour number 2 coming your way. It's Sports Daily. It's a Wednesday. Don't go anywhere.
Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Paul Savage here with you on this Wednesday edition. The KFH hotline is open at 869-1240. Glad to be here with you on this coverage. If you can't get enough Chiefs coverage, by the way, if you didn't see, you've got a new Heights with Jason and Travis Kelce out. You can check it out for free on the Odyssey app. Follow it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. It has been a busy season of the NFL offseason with the combine going through, all the movement. We do have a Jason Kelce official retirement in all of that, which has been an emotional experience. The Kelce brothers last night chugging beers at the Cavs game, watching Dean Wade, the former K-Stater, lead the Cavs to a big comeback victory over the Celtics. That was kind of cool.
It was cool.
Another, you sent me this, Paul, and we can get into this here real quick. Dartmouth did get its union formed, it looks like. Now, there are other steps to take here. And look, I think this is a likely thing. Now, this is private school, right? So in the public. But I do think the more I go through this and the challenges of it potentially, I don't know how this looks holistically for the future of college athletics. I tend to think this will come down to conferences. So, do you have athletes unify among schools in a certain conference? I don't think you can have it where you have sort of unionization and collective bargaining, right, among individual schools. I don't think that's the answer because it would be too complicated. It would be too much. I think by conference is probably where this lands. I try to think of other, unions and stuff, and I don't know enough. Like Starbucks is dealing with it now, so are there groups of stores? Is it everybody among one store and another collectively? I don't think it is. So I don't know how that looks, but I think it's likely. And I do think collective bargaining is probably the best way to attack this, down the road once we figure this all out. And probably by conference is the way it makes the most sense. So for instance, you have, probably like an SEC football players union that negotiates then with the league among schools in that league for just football, right? That would be different potentially than, let's say, a men's basketball players union, a women's basketball. Like, does it go to individual sports? I think probably it does. I don't know that you can do it among all sports because that would be too difficult to negotiate out the differences, right, in your like Olympic sports versus your football. I remain so fascinated by how this is going to play out, and burying your head in the sand and saying, oh, they'll never be able to do it, is not the right way to think, because it's going to happen. It's coming. They just continue to win case after case after case after case. There really isn't like a political I don't see a political angle on this, Paul, where you could have this becoming like a partisan issue by any means, because I think you'd have too much. Like, how do you even do that, right? If you're a politician or if you're one of the political parties trying to like take a side here, it's too complicated, right? You want everyone, I think, in general, wants the players to be able to earn. I think everybody wants this. So I don't know that there's much hope to just say, well, maybe this won't happen. I think it's going to happen. It's just how quickly does it happen?
Right.
And how do we get ahead of it and make the best of it?
And the reason I sent the story to you is because we have been talking about this for, oh goodness gracious, I don't know, a year or two, if not more, and it finally happened. The camel's nose is now under the tent. We've got action. How will this play out? I don't know. I would imagine, though, that the appeal of a union will the appeal of unions, I should say, with regards to different universities or different conferences, or however this plays out, is going to be fascinating, because it's going to be one of those things, Jacob, where I kind of doubt, and I don't know if this is right or not, but I kind of doubt that one size is going to fit all. One size, I don't believe, will fit all, depending on the school, the sport.
No, but
and it's going to be an interesting situation. But it's happened, and it's coming, and there's nothing that I think Tommy or you or I or any of us or even Jad can do about it. It's happened for the first time, and there's going to be more of it, because and by the way, this happened at Dartmouth, private school, Ivy League, and it makes you wonder how much money is involved in that football, basketball, whatever the program is that will unionize. How much money is involved? Is there enough money to justify a union? I don't know. Is there enough money at the University of Alabama to justify a union? Hello? Yes, there is. There's a lot of money involved there, and players are going to start getting more and more of their share of that at Alabama. Dartmouth, I'm not quite so sure how that's going to play out. I don't know that the money is there. There's got to be money somewhere in order for these union type situations to work. But here again, well, I'm talking about things that we've never experienced. We have no idea, do we?
No, we don't. And I don't, again, like, I think Dartmouth will be it is the first, and it is significant, but it's going to be a bad example of whatever this looks like, otherwise moving forward, as we bring Tommy in now, who joins us here on Sports Daily. Tommy, we talk about this all the time. Dartmouth is not going to be the example of what happens in big time, college athletics, but I think it does give us a small crack into the future, in the sense that if Dartmouth is able to do this, everybody's going to be able to do this. So if we can all sit and acknowledge that this is coming, how do we make the best of it collectively? Best for the players, best for the schools, best for the conferences, best for the programs. I think the more conversations that are had ahead of it, instead of trying to stop it from happening, because you can't stop this from happening, are going to create a better outcome for everybody when the day inevitably comes.
I don't want to be about it at all. I don't want to be the guy that, has more problems than solutions or more questions than answers. But I think that one of the major issues with all of this is you've got some selfish interests on both sides. And that's the way that it always
Absolutely.
works when you have, some kind of union versus an employer. Not that unions are bad. I'm not necessarily saying that. But what I'm saying is that you've got, two opposing sides that are out for themselves, basically trying to figure out, who's going to cave first, who's going to give up the most. You can call it compromise all you want, but it's both sides attempting to try to get as much as they possibly can from the other. That's not necessarily the recipe for a productive discussion about how to make the entire industry better. It's a discussion about who's going to give up more, the union or the school. And so if you're really trying to put together a collaborative approach with all of this with college athletics, and I think that that would be, in an ideal world, what everybody would want to do, having a union and then having a lot of the contentious negotiations that happen with unions traditionally, and I think that might end up doing more harm than good.
Right.
Don't you think, though, that at least to me, it feels this way? Like, I don't view players' unions in the pro leagues the same way I view an auto workers union or the Screen Actors Guild union or the nurses unions that are, popping up all over the. I don't think of them the same way. And I know they're the same, in spirit, but I do think they operate a little bit differently sometimes. I just, there is a collective interest here among the players and the programs and the conferences. If you fundamentally understand and acknowledge that the players are going to get paid, I don't, and we've talked about this too. Like, look, just because you are paying a player does not mean that NIL goes away, right? So if you do this, and let's say you form a football union, most of the money that's going to get made by these student athletes is through NIL. I'm not trying to imagine a scenario where the university is writing $1 million check to its star quarterback. That's not sustainable. That's not going to work. But they can write a healthy check, but then still allow for NIL opportunities for those players. So let's say you're the star quarterback and it's been negotiated that football players make X amount of dollars paid by the university. That's been collectively bargained, right? Now you can tell those players through these collective bargaining negotiations, you have to work so many years or you can't transfer. If you do transfer and you break this contract, you have to sit out for an X number of time, just like a coach's buyout, right? We have coaches' buyouts all the time. But we're not limiting what you can earn out on your own in the NIL space still, right? The NIL space still exists. And so I think everybody's got it stuck in their heads that now all of a sudden, Wichita State's got to pay basketball players this absurd amount of money. No, I don't think that's how this is going to work, because that's not sustainable. That's not going to work. It will be a bargained amount that makes sense. There will probably be a bargained amount of revenue share that happens based on, TV deals or whatever it is. And then you still have the NIL space to go earn. That's where the big money's coming. Caitlin Clark earns a ton of money because she's so marketable right now. It's not going to be down the road because Iowa's writing her a big check. It'll be because Nike's writing her a big check. That doesn't have to change in what I keep imagining this looking like. That stays the same. You just have the ability now on both sides for the players to get a little bit. Maybe they get health insurance bargained out of it. Maybe they get a little bit of revenue sharing bargained out of it. And on the university side, Paul, You get the assurances that you have to be here for this long, or there are penalties for you not being here this long. It sort of helps and solves some of the transfer portal issues that they're seeing too, because now there's accountability on the players' side more so in that collective bargaining.
Well, you're exactly right. And as a man of the media, you understand that there are certain restrictions you have in your contract. In other words, non-compete.
Absolutely.
They're called basically non-compete
Non-competes.
clauses, and I'm sure you have them. And that's what's going to happen. And let's face it, I like the way you put that, because when you look at the situation with Dartmouth, it's going to be a little different than the University of Kansas basketball team.
Sure.
This was the Dartmouth basketball team, Tommy, I believe is who this was involving, was the Dartmouth basketball team. Well, their situation in the University of Kansas probably financially are going to be a little different. And so we're going to see a lot of this happens, a lot of this thing go on. And you look at it, I'm just guessing with Dartmouth. I'm guessing, what do they average? 800 to 1,000 per home game. I'm guessing, but I'll bet that's fairly accurate. And there's going to be
I have no idea. Probably.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little different than 20-some thousand that come down on Fieldhouse for a KU home game. So this is going to shake out. It's going to clean out. But you brought up something I didn't quite think of yet, and that is the non-compete clause. And that's going to be that when you become an employee and when you get the deal of an employee, you're going to be here for a while. And it's going to be for this season, the next season, and this season, or maybe your entire run. I don't know how that will work, but you're going to sign a contract much like a baseball player in Major League Baseball or an NFL player in football. You're going to sign a contract as an employee. Because let's face it, Patrick Mahomes is still an employee. He has a contract, but he's an employee of the Kansas City Chiefs. And college athletes are going to be the same thing. They're going to be employees with contracts.
I don't have any kind of issue. I've got no issue with contracts. I've got no issue with college athletes having, that sort of protection, but then also the universities having the protection of knowing that those athletes are going to be playing for them for a period of time. I've got no issue with that. My opinion, though, is that I think that all of these things can be accomplished without a union. I think that, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that
I don't know how do you do collective bargaining without a union?
I don't think you need to do collective bargaining. I think that you've got a situation where you've got institutions and the players themselves, and maybe they're represented by agents or whatever, doing the negotiations. We talked about, Jacob, you've got a non-compete. I've got a non-compete. I negotiated a deal directly with my employer. You negotiated one directly with your employer. I'm not part of a union, and I was able to get it done myself. And I know it's apples and oranges. It's a larger conversation, but don't you think that these institutions, and okay, maybe I'm being a little Pollyanna and thinking that these institutions are not going to collude against each other to drive down the contract amounts and things like that. But I also think that from a competitive standpoint, why would these institutions want to collude with each other? If I'm the University of Kansas,
that's
for
why
example,
I think
then why
wouldn't
I want to be paying these players a lot more than the competition so I can secure the best talent possible?
That's why it needs to be collectively bargained by, to me. So here's let me lay out a dream scenario. I say dream, but a best case scenario for how this works. The conferences, if the conferences are negotiating the TV deals and that's how that's happening, then to me it makes the most sense for the conferences to do this. You keep competitive balance if you're the conferences, which again, I'm sure the Dallas Cowboys would love to just go outspend the Jacksonville Jaguars every year, but that's not what's best for the league. It's not what's best for the fans, right? And so if you can do it by conference, that's probably the most comparable financials. And I know the concerns people have are that there's going to be a hoarding of talent, that you're not going to have amateurism anymore. I would just say that, like, being a student employee of the university does not make you not a student. I was a student employee on campus. Now, granted, I made $5 an hour, but I was a student employee on campus, didn't compromise. And a part of the collective bargaining from the school's perspective is, look, if you don't maintain your grades, then it's not good enough, right? Like you keep the same spirit of what's there now in a scholarship. You've just tied financial compensation into the same sorts of agreements that you're going to have now. Conferences can decide, okay, here is a football budget. Here's how much you have to spend. Now,
So you're talking about a salary cap.
Yeah, essentially among sports within a league. Absolutely, I am, because it's bargained at that point. And then there is some equity. Now, look, but I'm also saying you leave the NIL space open, because I don't ever want to cap what anybody can earn in any walk of life. That's how, Patrick Mahomes is going to make most of his money in endorsements, not in his, player contract. You got to do both, but the real financial gains exist the way they do now, right, in the NIL space. And quite frankly, guys, like, I don't care what somebody earns in the NIL space. They can earn as much as somebody is willing to pay them. Now, the other court battles to watch and all that are that boosters contributing to NILs are probably just going to be allowed. And so be it. Again, I don't care about that. I care about some mutual way to have the players and the schools each get something that they need to make this work the right way. Schools need to revenue share to certain sports that earn the most money, but they need assurances that players aren't just going to bounce around and collude and hear from other teams and all of those things. But what the spirit of a scholarship should do now, but again, when there's no financial incentive to it, scholarships are great. They're a big part of it, but they're not the biggest part of it. And so if everybody would just think that way now, instead of thinking about what they want to not happen, then you can make real progress here. And look, I'm not pro or anti-union. That's not, I just don't know how else you're going to get this thing bargained out than unless you have a group of people representing a larger group of people. It's different than you are. And there are unions within,
I just think, look,
the media industry too.
I just think you can accomplish mostly the same thing without a union.
But how do you do that though? Like, how do you have to have representatives from both to be able to get as close to neutral as you can, as close to a level playing field as you can for everybody, because it's going to be hard to have each in. And I guess logistically, it's just like, how is a school or a conference going to bargain this out with 90 football players or whatever it is? Like, that's not, to me, that's not attainable. It is far more attainable for each side to have representatives to come up with the best possible solution. And I think about feasibility in this all the time. Like, what's actually feasible? But again, the problem is everybody's trying to right now figure out like how to keep the most away from the other side. There is mutual benefit here. The universities and the coaches hate the Wild West nature of this. Bargain that out. Take that away. And if you're worried about the money, find out whatever the number is that can be revenue shared, right? Is it 1%, 2%? And get that to the players, even if it's evenly distributed. I don't even care about that, because they're going to have, your star players will still have the ability to earn more or whatever they're worth in the NIL space, which in my version of this exists almost untouched from what it is now. You get control of the transfer portal, and players, can get health insurance or whatever it is that they need to take the risk that they're taking. That's the stuff that can get bargained in. You think an 18-year-old kid's going to go to the table with an athletic director and bargain out health insurance?
No, but his agent
That's the part that makes it hard.
His agent might be able to do that.
Yeah, I think there's more exploitation in that world than there would be in a union world, right? Like,
hey,
that to me can get pretty exploitative.
These players want to be considered as employees. You can't have it both ways. You can't treat them as an employee, but then also hold their hand through the process. You cannot have it both ways.
it's either going to be an agent holding their hand or it's going to be, a collective union holding hands. Like somebody's
One
going
or
to
the other.
Hold. I don't think you're going to get like a Lamar Jackson situation where some kid just tries to go in and is that savvy to it that they can do what they need to get done.
Right.
It's not attainable on the university side either. Universities aren't set to do this. And if you don't have, and again, I would rather see this happen at a conference level, right? The Big 12 has here's what its football players union has negotiated out. Here's what you get if you come play football in the Big 12. And the talent distribution will be the same when there's earning involved, right? Because you can either play or you can not play. I think we'll still make positive inroads that we've made. It's all complicated. I guess the point for me is if you just keep trying to hope that it's not going to happen, that it's going to be worse.
The process
Understand that it
yes.
will happen,
it's going to
and
happen.
go figure out the best way to do it. Much smarter people than the three of us, certainly.
That's correct.
Can, I think, get together and get this thing figured out. I want to get Tommy's thoughts on the handshake line last night. It's probably the social media topic coming out of the Sunflower Showdown.
You got that.
There's video evidence. We've scoured through. We've examined. We've determined. We've really dug deep on this. I'm being very facetious because I really don't care. But it's fun to talk about, and it adds to a rivalry. So we'll do it next on Sports Daily.
KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily Full House here. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Paul Savage with you on this Wednesday. Sunflower Showdown in the books. KU dominates in round number 2 at home against K-State. We got handshake line beef here, Tommy. So catch us up. What's the latest? It's the first thing I woke up to this morning. Everyone, throwing a fit on social media. So what's happened here?
Well, apparently after the game, there was, the traditional handshake line between the two programs. And allegedly, I haven't actually seen video of it, and maybe I'm missing it on social media, but apparently Jerome Tang and his staff very quickly and coldly breezed through the handshake line. And the only reason that this, I think, has become a part of the discussion is because Bill Self did address it in his post-game press conference and talked about how, that apparently K-State was not in the mood to shake hands, and something about the last time that Kansas went to Manhattan and they got beat, they did shake hands, but for some reason that wasn't part of, what K-State wanted to do. So basically that's kind of where it all stands as of right now.
Now, Bill Self phrased it as a flyby.
He did.
And Coach Tang did a
flyby. A flyby.
Now, listen, shaking, you guys understand the passion of sports. Sometimes it is dang hard to go shake somebody's hand. I can tell you right now, there have been many a time against a coach that I've lost to. Usually it's when I lose to him. Usually. And it's so hard to go shake their hand. But you do it. Coach Tang, I love you to death. But there are certain things.
He did do it. I've seen the video. He did.
Well, there's
okay. So I've also seen. Listen, I've also seen video of Bill Self after the game against. Against in Manhattan, and it was also. The time spent shaking is almost identical in both situations. I think Bill Self is in a fun way trolling to add a little animosity and add to this rivalry, which let me just say I appreciate greatly. But fans, nobody ghosted anybody or anything. Do you want them to give each other a great big hug after these games? No, they want to beat the other one's brains in here, and KU happen to do that.
And look, Self mentioned also kind of a dig at Jerome Tang about how he jumps into the crowd after home wins, and he basically said, hey, we're used to that, we see that, kind of thing. And look, if you know me, you know that I am a KU fan. I'm a proud KU fan. I didn't take any offense to what happened last night. It wasn't anything bad. And at the end of the day, I'm kind of glad that it was a short flyby. These two programs shouldn't like each other. They shouldn't get along. It's an in-state rivalry. And so I don't want Bill Self and Jerome Tang going out to dinner together. I don't want them embracing at midcourt after a game. I'm fine with the flyby. Has no issue to me. And okay. You know what? At the end of the day, too, the final score is the final score. That's ultimately what matters. And I think it does add fuel to the fire. I think Bill Self he's a very calculated guy. I think he knew what he was saying. And I think that he kind of likes adding fuel to that fire, especially when you blow out your in-state rival on senior night.
And can I come to the defense of Coach Tang? Because as I was just saying a second ago, passion in this kind of stuff is unbelievable, guys. It is unbelievable. You put your time, you put your effort, you put your blood, sweat, and tears. By the way, there was a good band by the name of that. But you put all that stuff in on coaching these kids. You give them everything you got. And then when you lose in the fashion that K-State lost last night, then it becomes personal. And that's where it becomes so hard to get the personal part of it out. But you got to do it. You've got to, and a flyby, I guess, is okay. And I guess you could have said, I'm not going to do it all. I'm not going to get in the line, I guess.
Tommy, go pull this up for you and Paul. Go to Harold Kuntz, reporter out of Kansas City. You got a great perspective on the handshake. Okay, I want you to watch the handshake from last night. And then I want you to look at one of the 800 versions of the handshake in Manhattan. And I want you to tell me if there's any difference at all in the two handshakes, because there's not. This is, I don't know. I don't know exactly why Bill Self went down this road. I did not hear the question.
He was asked the question. I heard the question. It was, and I don't know who asked it, but it was, Coach Self, did you have any issue with the handshake after the game? That was the question. So, what's he going to say? No.
It was fine.
That's what he said. He said no. If you go watch his response, you're like, no, I don't have an issue with it.
Okay, but now I want you to go, but know that he said that, and he kind of trolled a little bit there. And I do go watch the handshake from last night. Harold Kuntz has the best angle of it that I've seen. And then I want you to go watch the handshake for the broadcast of the Manhattan game and understand that they are absolutely identical. So I don't know, other than just totally messing with somebody, what Self is going for there, which again, that doesn't bother me at all. I love the trash talk. I love all that stuff. But fans are trying to, paint some picture and narrative of, this is just go watch them both real quick. It'll take you 5 seconds.
I've watched them. I've watched them both.
They're both
I don't know.
I mean, they're identical.
I don't know what you're trying to argue here. I'm not saying that.
I'm not trying to argue anything. I'm just trying to, for fans that are trying to paint a narrative about either coach, just understand that nothing happened last night. There wasn't anything. When Tommy sent me that this morning, I was like, what do you mean? I remember very vividly watching the players shake each other's hands. And you're like, well, the coaches. And then so I went and looked, and I'm like, well, no, the coaches did too.
Well, the only video that I'm finding,
I don't even know why
the only video
anybody
I'm finding
even asked the question
from Harold Kuntz in Kansas City is the pregame handshake between Jerome Tang and Bill Self when they're approaching each other.
Oh, is that what that was?
That's what that video is.
Okay,
that's
so
not postgame.
There's another one then of the broadcast that shows Coach Tang shaking the players' hands. I don't know what happened with Bill Self then. That makes more sense. And I'll have to find it again. I can't give the exact person. But there is I think Fitz may have, no, that's for the KU game. There's another one because I saw it after the game. Tank definitely shook players' hands. Maybe he missed the coaches. I don't know.
I don't blame Jerome Tang at all. I'm not saying that he did something wrong. What I'm saying is that if the two staffs don't like each other, and maybe they don't, I don't have any inside knowledge on that. But if they don't, they shouldn't. If they do,
right,
they shouldn't.
But they still
recruit against each other every day.
And by the way, this is a way to get under Jerome Tang. Listen, Bill Self has been the creme de la creme of basketball coaches in this state forever, as long as he's been here. Well, now he's having to share a little bit of the limelight with Jerome Tang. Jerome Tang is great at this. He's good at this. He's great at that. He's the greatest thing that's come to K-State in years and years and years since Jack Hartman. And thank goodness for Jerome Tang. And Bill Self knows this. I mean, he's sharing the highlights or the stage a little bit in the state of Kansas with Jerome Tang. He's not the big dog that he was with certain K-State.
Sure, he is.
He is.
Bill Self is absolutely the top dog.
But I'll ask,
why would he go?
But I'll ask
Tommy?
you guys this: has he had a bigger threat though that you can remember in the recruiting space or areas like that? I'm not sure he's had that sort of threat from K-State in a while.
I mean, everybody, and this is not a knock on Jerome Tang because I like Jerome Tang a lot. And I think that he, the way that he carries himself typically and his recruiting and all of that is outstanding. But people act like that program was one step away from shutting down when Jerome Tang came in. And that's not the case. No. Bruce Weber led them to a decent amount of success, Elite Eight.
But he was there a long time.
And Bruce Weber wasn't
recruiting players against Bill Self.
Frank Martin was a great coach for Kansas State. Bob Huggins was there for a year. This program, it had, some years in the early 2000s and maybe even the late 90s where it was kind of down in the dumps, but it's been a fairly quality program for a number of years, and everybody's acting like Jerome Tang is the savior coming in, and the program has been fine. They had dipped a little bit at the end of the Bruce Weber era. There's no doubt about that, but it wasn't like a dire situation, I don't think.
We had conversations about Weber. Should he stay? Should he go? I mean, we had that for what, probably 2 years,
Sure.
didn't we, Jacob? At least 2 years. So it did get a little dicey at the end for Bruce Weber. Let's not camouflage that. But here's the thing. Jerome Tang and the University of Kansas are probably only competing on certain kids within the world of recruiting. They're going to recruit on the really good Kansas kids. That's the one that they're probably, they will have conversations with certain players at certain schools across the country, but they're not going to cross paths that much. Where they will cross paths and where there's a certain advantage for Bill Self to say something like this would be for the ears of local people only, local recruits only, to get that going with that situation. That's the only thing that I can think of that he would say something, or bring it up or elaborate on it.
Let me give you an example of what I mean.
Right.
I understand the rich history of K-State, but when we talk about Tang coming in and Bill Self is very, strategic and calculated in this stuff. I just pulled up, 24/7 sports recruiting, which is usually what I use for recruiting stuff. If you go and look at the all-time basketball recruits for K-State, all time, right? There are 3 of the top 6 that are a part of Jerome Tang's classes. 3 of the top 6 and probably 4 of about the top 10 or 15 have all come in or are coming in. Came in last year or coming in next year. That doesn't even include the transfer guys, right? And so that's the threat that's new, I think, is that it's always been inherently understood that KU's always going to get the best players. Now, they may not always have the best team or anything like that, but they're always going to get the best players. Well, K-State's now creeped into that world. And that's the threat that Jerome Tang presents that hasn't been there before. Now you've got a threat for the same players. KU and K-State have, I mean, as far as I can remember, have never really been on the same types of players, but now they are. So that adds to this rivalry, again, which I love greatly and I think is amazing, but that's why we're going to see a little heat. And even if it's manufactured heat, like I think it was last night, Tommy, they've never recruited the same caliber players KU's on until now that I can remember.
Good for them. It's not a knock on Jerome Tang at all. He's done.
No, it's a credit to him. But that's why I'm saying I think you may see a little more heat come from Bill Self, is because now this level of competition is not just on the floor. It's like program wide to a level that maybe we haven't seen, at least in a long time.
You mean the level of competition that led to Kansas State losing by 30 points last night? That level of competition on the floor?
They lost by 22. And the level of competition that saw them beat KU in Manhattan, and Jerome Tang has now split in his meetings with Bill Self. Yes, that level of competition that literally won the same amount of games against each other.
The level of competition that shows that Kansas State hasn't swept the University of Kansas in 20 plus years.
Well, now your fan hat's on. What are you trying to say?
What I'm saying is that if anybody is thinking that Bill Self is concerned about what's going on in Manhattan, you're out of your mind, because he's not at all.
Oh, he definitely is.
No,
he definitely is. They're competing for the same players.
He 100% is not at all. He's not.
Okay.
Why? Okay. Bill Self is the best in the business. Let me qualify that. Why would Bill Self never play Wichita State? Because he's calculated.
That has nothing to do with that situation.
It has everything to do with it, Tommy.
It does.
Nothing to do with it.
Like Wichita State did. Yeah, but
they did.
Well, they will now. They did now.
Yeah,
because Wichita State's down.
For years they wouldn't.
Wichita State wasn't down when they scheduled the game. Just a heads up on that.
Yes, they were.
No, they weren't. They scheduled that game, I believe, around the same time that Wichita State was under Isaac Brown going to the first 4 in the NCAA tournament. It wasn't the Wichita State team that lost the games that they've lost this season. They didn't just book this game. It's been on the schedule.
That's a little
for
different than Wichita State being perennially ranked and making NCAA tournament.
Is your argument about Wichita State? Is your argument about Kansas State?
That's a good point, though, Tommy.
No, I didn't. I wasn't going to make any of this argument until you just said Bill Self has no concern about Jerome Tang, which is equivocal. There's no chance
Bill Self has
that's
no
true.
concern about any other opposing coaches at all. He's at the top of the mountain, and he's
well, he better have concern. He's got to recruit against him.
He's been doing it for 20 some years in Lawrence. He doesn't concern himself with anything outside of his own program.
And the reason he's been so successful is because he pays attention to that stuff.
Yeah, and he's got his foot on the throats of everybody else. He's not going to take that off. He's going to keep it there and press a little harder when he knows down the road they're getting great players. He's got it. I applaud him for it. It's part of his greatness, is he knows exactly what he's doing all the time. 869-1240. We can roll it into the next segment. We'll be right back. More Sports Daily after this. such a fun way to spend my last few minutes before I got a long break is to get Tommy's feathers ruffled, apparently. Tommy, I can't believe you don't think Jerome Tang isn't any threat to KU when they recruit the same players now.
I'm not saying that he's not a legitimate threat. You're twisting my words. He's absolutely done an incredible job, especially in recruiting. I'm just saying that, and I'm not even just suggesting it's Bill Self. I think any coach worth his salt doesn't concern himself or bother himself with what other teams are doing. He's got his own program to focus on, his own recruiting to focus on, and I'm sure he knows what they're doing, but I'm not sure that he's lying in bed awake at night, shaking in his boots because Jerome Tang is a good recruiter.
No,
that's what you're saying.
That's not what anybody's saying. What I'm saying
you're saying he's concerned about what Jerome Tang is doing in the state of Kansas.
I'm saying, of course he's concerned. They're competitors. But I think that what I'm saying is there's a reason you're seeing a little animosity where maybe it doesn't seem necessary. And that's because it is more competitive in some spaces that it hasn't been as competitive.
You're seeing animosity because they're in-state rivals and they've never liked each other. That's okay.
No, I know they don't like each other.
It has nothing to do with the status of who's recruiting better.
I'm just saying that I don't even know. I'm not going to have enough time to think of the right word here because I don't want this to sound like it's a negative in any way to Bill Self for Kansas, because it's not that at all. That's not what I mean. What I mean is you get a little more ribbing and poking, and I use the word troll in the nicest way I can, in a positive way, because it is now at a level. Even for the basketball program, it has the potential to be, and I think it probably may be there now, at a level we haven't seen it in a while. Not just because K-State had the deep NCAA tournament run.
That's not
and not
true.
Just because Jerome Tang is 2-2. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's because it's in the other spaces now where it hasn't ever been close, that it's closer than it has been. So, yeah, add to that fire, add to that rivalry, get in there.
You want to tell me that the rivalry wasn't competitive when Kansas State had guys like Dean Wade and Barry Brown and Nigel Pack, and Marcus
Dean Wade
Foster
was a legacy. Dean Wade was a legacy player. He was an alumni guy and all of those things. No, I don't think Kansas State has ever been able to recruit with KU. And I'm not even saying they can recruit with them now, but I think they're closer to them in recruiting than they ever have been.
Of the rivalry. And I would argue that it's been competitive as recently as a couple of years ago. It was competitive last year with Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson.
I don't think it's ever been this competitive off the court on the recruiting trail, is my point. I don't think there's ever been a bigger threat coming from Manhattan in the recruiting space than there is right now. And I think Bill Self knows that, and I think he's going to poke it as much as he can, and I love it, and I'm here for all of it. It's amazing. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on the network tonight when we get back on Sports Daily.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
What makes you so different than the rest of us?
We ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Our investment counselors focus on service over sales, prioritizing clients' needs.
How do you make money?
We don't sell any commission-based products. We have a simple management fee based on the value of our client's portfolio. So we do better when our clients do better.
What about client portfolios?
We get to know each client, their finances, family, health, lifestyle, and more, and then we tailor a portfolio based on their specific goals and needs.
Your clients really come first then, huh?
Yes, we make them a top priority. Our goal is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Wow, maybe we are different.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. Attention all wrestling fanatics. Get ready to witness intense competition at the NCAA Division II National Wrestling Championships, taking place at Hartman Arena on March 15th and 16th. Snag your all-session tickets now. Just $50 for adults and $30 for students. Prepare for an adrenaline-fueled 2-day wrestling competition as college athletes go head-to-head. This thrilling event is proudly presented by Visit Wichita and Newman University. For additional details and to score your tickets, visit ncaa.com/tickets.
Wichita's official radio voice of CBS Sports. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Go Hog Wild, Pit Barbecue. Hog Wild, get some for you.
It's $5.99 barbecue time. Hurry to Hog Wild for a complete barbecue meal that's only $5.99. Terry Caldwell, Hog Wild partner and general manager in Wichita at Maple and West Street, has all the details on this smoking deal.
Get a Hog Wild sandwich loaded with our award-winning meats like pulled pork, pulled chicken, or hot links, plus your choice of a classic side and a drink for just $5.99.
Upgrade your sandwich to beef brisket for just $1 more. Join us for lunch or dinner. You can also order online at GoHogWild.com. Hog Wild Pit Barbecue. 6 locations in Wichita. Also in Derby, El Dorado, Hutchinson, and Salina.
Go Hog Wild, Pit Barbecue. Hog Wild, get some for you. But don't be late, we close at 8.
Looking for a new trimmer, blower, or chainsaw to get your yard ready for the spring season? Shop Pride Ag Ace Hardware for a large selection of steel products. Pride Ag Ace Hardware, 5204 North Maze Road, where we take pride in serving you.
When a cold keeps you up, try NyQuil Severe Honey Flavor. The nighttime, sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, fever, Honeylicious, best sleep with a cold medicine. Powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a dreamy honey taste to give your body the rest it needs to get that cold gone. Wake up refreshed, feeling relieved after enjoying the delicious flavor of NyQuil Severe Honey. NyQuil Severe Honey flavor, use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
At Lowe's, save big every day when you buy in bulk. Save 15% when you buy 10 or more select primed finger joint boards. And there's more. Save 10% on your choice of any 5 or more Reliabuilt lock sets. Visit us in-store or online for low prices on the materials you need. Because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details.
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
College men's basketball last night. Sunflower Showdown Part 2. Kansas State on the road visiting 14th ranked Kansas. It did not go well for the Wildcats. A huge win for the Jayhawks. 90-68 was the final score. You heard it right here on KFH on the K-State Radio Network.
RJ with it with 4. Another 3. That one is just off the mark. KU rebounds, and that will do it. The Jayhawks dominate K-State in the second half, outscoring them 49-35, and they win the ballgame 90-68.
So the Jayhawks and the Wildcats split their regular season series, each winning at home. KU has won senior night on home court 40 years in a row. Meanwhile, Kansas State has now lost its last 8 road games, and the Wildcats have lost 18 straight games in Lawrence against the Jayhawks. Hunter Dickinson leading KU with 15 points, 20 rebounds, 5 blocked shots. I'm Ted, the Sports Head.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, coming up tonight, you've got Butler basketball at 7:15, regular programming until then, including Bob and Jeff here locally at 2. That's it for me for a little while. I will see you guys after next week. Good luck, Tommy, with Paul for that long.
What do you mean by that?
I'm glad you're walking away, so the next couple of days I can just talk bad about you.
That's fine.
There you go.
That's fine. I won't know about any of it most likely, so you've got the hall pass there. I'll see everybody soon. Thanks everybody back here for holding it down. Until then, for Paul, for Tommy, for Jad, I'm Jacob. See ya.